Good evening and welcome to this very short webinar where I will attempt to bring my book Retirability to life. This evening I'll be talking for about 20 minutes to 25 minutes, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask some questions using the chat facility, which you should see right under the center of your screen. So the intention is for us to answer any questions that you may have at the end of today's session. We have actually had some questions sent in advance of the webinar, which I'll be answering at the end of the session. So today is very much about me talking about how we get emotionally ready from both a financial perspective and also from a emotional perspective, because as I'll mention a few times today, retirement is more than just accumulating a financial nest egg. Now, as financial planners, most of the work that we do with clients is obviously helping them to ensure they have enough money to outlive them. But, you know, with 25 years of giving retirement advice to individuals, you do get emotionally involved with that retirement journey, and much of that was put into my book, Retirability. So I'm really pleased to be able to run this session today. I am going to stop my video and share some presentation slides with you. So I will be talking now for approximately 20-25 minutes. And as I did say, there will be opportunities for you to ask questions at the end. So let's start by looking at retirement readiness then. One of the things that we often do see and witness is a thing called retirement shock. Retirement is a massive life change, and I believe it's the biggest change individuals will ever experience, topping our first day at school, your first job, leaving your parental home, getting married or maybe divorced, and having children. It removes something that's been with some people for 30 years or more, and that's your career, your business. More than anything else, your career has been your constant companion, providing you with structure, discipline, social interaction, competition, drive, and achievement. It's a real pressure cooker environment for which many, whether it's an employee or a business owner, it's the worst possible preparation for retirement. And if it's not appropriately managed by replacing work with some other meaningful purpose, it can result in a condition known as retirement shock, as we've covered on here. It's a sort of identity crisis that can be a catalyst for many illnesses, in particular depression. Unfortunately, there isn't many retirement boot camps out there. While many organisations do provide training for you to get better at your job, very few organisations provide training on how to successfully transition from an employee to a retiree. That's very much for you to sort out. A condition known as retirement shock occurs when you fear you will not have enough money to maintain the things you want to do in retirement, your desired lifestyle that you may be enjoying today, or you've not emotionally prepared for retirement, and you mourn the loss of your corporate you, the business owner you. And this is quite common. So having the financial resources to continue an accustomed lifestyle is probably the main source of anxiety for retirees. They really fear running out of money before they run out of life. And without having the financial confidence that they've accumulated enough, the likely result is that the employee or business owner will defer their retirement. They really need to be confident that they can enjoy a purposeful retirement, a meaningful retirement, and they've got enough money. So not being emotionally ready to give up work, again, is another major cause of retirement deferment, and for many results in what we call the comeback, when people retire and they miss the vigors and challenges of work and they're desperate to return to the fold. Not being emotionally ready to hang up their suit. So let's explore now, why is it so difficult, retirement? What makes it so challenging? As I mentioned previously, one of the biggest changes you'll ever experience in life is retirement. And this phase sees something important vanish overnight, which is your career. That career has been a constant companion, providing you with purpose, structure, discipline, friendships, social interactions, competition, drive, a real sense of achievement. And although you might be prepared to fill that financial hole of losing income in retirement, you really need to think about how you'll plug that inevitable hole in your personal life. So many employees and business owners, they're a dedicated and professional bunch and give their heart and soul over to their business. They put in long hours, often making personal sacrifices, sacrificing family time, often for their career or their business, especially in the early years when they're building up and climbing the corporate ladder. So for many business owners, employers, and we see this very frequently, work becomes life itself. Their business or their career often takes precedent over everything else because life can get in the way of promotion, which leaves you firmly rooted in the rat race. So you can fund all those necessities and outward trappings of professional successes. So for many employees and business owners, their sense of meaning or self-worth becomes linked to the corporation, and the success scorecard is often money, which is very easy to measure. This connection with money and self-worth reinforces this corporate career cycle of this rat race of cycle of working harder to move up the ladder as fast and as soon as possible. Self-worth often equals net worth. So in many occasions, we do see that financial interests are put before life interests for the pressures of, paying the bills, paying the mortgage, keeping up with the Joneses, whatever they may be. And these sacrifices are justified in the mind of the employees or the business owner. Firstly, because they get a real buzz from it. And secondly, by the lifestyle it affords for them and their loved ones. The spoils of their labour, nice toys, great holidays, if not at the moment, the latest gadgets and the ego rewards of consumerism. So the corporation, your business, can quite easily absorb you. It sucks everything from you and can purge anything other than work. So often for hardworking employees, business owners, everything revolves around the career and fits in with its timetable that neglects everything else and disconnects with other areas of life, including sometimes, unfortunately, family, who can get more remote. So the corporate executive can be a bit of an empty shell, bankrupt emotionally, with little to offer when not talking shop. I realise this is pretty brutal stuff, but I'm sure it's something that you'll recognise and which you have some empathy with. So then retirement looms. While you may have dreamed about that freedom for years, when it's suddenly around the corner, the prospect of replacing something that's dominated your life feels a lot more real and serious. You no longer think about enjoying that month-long holiday of a lifetime, or instead your thoughts turn to what will it mean to give up the authority, your status, that professional identity, which may be your personal identity. So understandably, these late night thoughts are often scary and downright difficult to deal with. Living this life as a dedicated employee or business owners with a few scraps of time for yourself over a sustained period of time is the worst possible preparation for retirement. So just to repeat that, working hard is the worst possible preparation for life in retirement. Your professional strength can become a personal weakness, particularly when faced with leaving behind what you've excelled at for years to move into a place that's often alien for many people, which is free time. So let me now look at this retirement readiness. And I love this quote by a gentleman called Mitch Anthony, who said, retirement is having enough purpose to wake up in the morning and enough money to sleep at night. And I think if that sentence really sums up what retirement is about. And again, just to re-emphasize, it's more than just building up a financial nest egg. You need to psychologically prepare and gradually change your mindset into retirement, leaving behind this business corporate identity and discovering your authentic real self that the corporate life has possibly, not always, but has possibly kept a lid on all these years. you've got to forget those past glories and really think ahead. So being retirement ready is when both emotional readiness to leave work behind and embrace your new free time with purpose, and having the financial capacity to maintain your desired accustomed lifestyle and have the confidence in your future financial security are both in sync. So we need to be emotionally and financially ready. One without the other will make your retirement a real challenge. So you have to be emotionally ready and financially ready. Without these, you may need to defer your retirement, or you may even attempt the comeback, which we are seeing more and more frequently these days. So we'll now consider how you become more retirement ready, and what the sort of things that you can do to change that mindset. Let's look at, firstly, emotional readiness for retirement. Many before you who have retired have shaken off these shackles of their employee, business owner, executive regime and the mindset, and have rebranded themselves with a new identity and, enjoy purposeful and happy retirements. One of our retired executive clients recently described retirement to me as playing life catch up. It's a definite change in mindset from wanting to work to wanting to do something else. And this often results in their love of work having faded, or the pull of being free of work to pursue other interests being greater than the work itself. And this can happen instantaneously for some, but for others, this transition can take years. Deciding to retire voluntarily is an agonizing choice, largely because often it is irreversible. It's leaving behind your career and income to do what? It's for this reason that moving from employment to pretirement, what we used to know as semi-retirement, can emotionally prepare you for when full retirement comes. Pretirement keeps your hand in work while sampling some more personal time to build your life out of your suit and steadily, as some would say, healthily withdraw from work. And it means that when the time arrives to stop work completely, moving from pretirement to retirement is not such an enormous step. For many, maybe yourselves, the idea of not working, whether paid or voluntarily work, is horrifying. So many people will secure, if they're able, some consultancy work, maybe non-executive directors positions, maybe a chairperson's role, or maybe becoming treasurer of your local domino club. But it's essential for your emotional well-being to keep that old grey matter stimulated and providing a continued sense of value and identity. This is really important. The feeling that you are still contributing and putting your knowledge and experience to good use. A new retirement or pretirement is emerging, in which work continues into retirement, but it's not work as it once was. Instead, it's doing the things that you enjoy and you're happy to continue doing. So life doesn't fit around work, but work fits around life, forming a happy balance and much greater satisfaction. However, it's not always the case. Retirement is very, very personal. There's no such thing as a perfect retirement. What ticks one person's box could be the retirement hell for another. Some people are able to leave their big job and immediately embrace retirement. Usually it's those who are emotionally ready, having mentally retired some years ahead of their actual date. And this is important. They retire from full-time work completely to enjoy some well-deserved leisure time. However, unless you're emotionally prepared to retire, this is going to be really difficult for you to leave work behind and successfully transition into retirement. If you're not emotionally ready, you either have to keep on working or quickly develop a new identity, a new authentic real self that corporate life has kept a lid on all these years. So let's also look at the second element of retirement readiness, and this is financial capacity. Being retirement ready is having trusted knowledge that you've accumulated enough wealth, not just to get by, but to afford the lifestyle that you and your family have become accustomed to. and maybe, just maybe, upsize that lifestyle, given that you now have time to spend money. Many retirees who we have coached at this phase in their life struggle to know what they want in their future life, but they know what they don't want, and that's having less than what they've got today. So having financial resources to continue their accustomed lifestyle is probably the main source of anxiety for retiring executives. They fear running out of money. And from experience, and this is going to sound obvious, retirement works better if you have enough money to live the life you want to live. We work with many clients that have enough and could upsize their lifestyle significantly if they choose to. But doing so would not necessarily make them happier. However, they get enormous relief from the knowledge that they could. This is what I describe as retirement contentment, removing the worry, which is really important if you're going to enjoy your retirement. So the prudent employee, business owner, executive will have been putting money aside for their retirement. Yet even for these, retirements will mostly result in a reduction in income and a need to draw down on savings that they've spent a lifetime accumulating just for this moment. This thought of stopping accumulating money, wealth, and even worse, drawing down on wealth, can instill much fear and anxiety in the mind of the retiree. And such a mindset can not only result in, again, the retiree deferring their retirement age, but maybe not retiring at all, but also potentially doing what we call underliving, which is downscaling their lifestyle for fear that one day they will run out of money. So without having the financial confidence of having enough money to live beyond work and being prepared to dip into these savings, it's unlikely that employees, business owners will take the plunge and retire, even if they're emotionally ready and eager to get out. So what I'd like to explore now is, how do we achieve this retirement readiness where we get this emotional and financial capacity in sync? So let's just talk about this now, and perhaps more important, let's think about how we achieve this emotional readiness without financial readiness. And this can be so frustrating for many people who are ready to retire, but either know they can't or think they can't financially afford to do this. So let's explore these in a bit more, and how we can change that mindset. Because often clients do ask us, how do we become more retirement ready? Well, retirement readiness is, from a financial perspective, is easy to measure, as it's a game of numbers just crunched together within a comprehensive lifetime cash flow plan. And this will reveal if you've got enough, and we'll look at this a little bit more later. So financial readiness is easy to measure. It's numbers. How much are you spending? How much resources have you got? Will you have enough? Let's calculate that within a cash flow plan, or a complex spreadsheet. That's easy to do. Emotional readiness is much more personal. So how will you know if you're ready? My experience from this is you'll just know. It may hit you out of the blue, but you'll just know when you've had enough. And either while working full-time, or if you're retired, semi-retired, many reach that point where work just does not offer the same level of satisfaction that it once did. And it may become too restrictive when your desire to do other things becomes more of an attraction. Your mindset changes and things other than work become more important. This, combined with a reasonable confidence that your money is not going to run out, is the point where many business owner, executives, employees reach the conclusion that now is the time to retire. So I'm just going to explore very briefly a few things that we feel help with this retirement readiness and this decision from both a financial and emotional perspective. The first thing you should do is set a date when you want to retire. Now that could be next month, but you need to get planning if it is, or it could be in 5 years' time. Note the word option, as you're not duty bound to retire at this age, but if you want to and you are emotionally ready and have the financial means, then you can. The process of thinking about when you want to retire and agreeing a date with yourself is also psychologically important. Indeed, it really makes retirement feel real and encourages you to think about it, to visualize what you will do and make plans, all of which will make the retirement transition far easier for you. It's not something that you can put off for the future. You know, planning must start now, however old you are. And it really, from our perspective, starts by determining the age at which you want the option of stopping work. The other thing that we would strongly recommend you do, and it's easier said than done, is to develop interests outside of work. So to make some time for yourself. Many people we see have been very successful at satisfying their material needs, but often this is at a personal cost, which is a lack of free time for themselves. Time absorbed by work leaves very little for the family, and what little time they do have after extracting themselves from work is often spent doing these family activities. This leaves even small amount of time for them and their creative interests, meaning their authentic self can often get stifled by work. So finding this person, your passions, when you retire can be really, really difficult, but find them you must. You cannot take this corporate identity into retirement. And those that do often mourn for that former self, which often, again, as we mentioned earlier, results in the comeback. And as it says on the slide here, remember, the harder you work, the harder it is to retire. You need to recognize your dependency on work and start to gradually wean yourself off it. Now is the time to work hard on creating a rich and fulfilled life outside of work, so you simply don't retire, but you have something to retire to. And part of this planning includes taking time out of your busy schedule to participate in some of those planned activities now, if you're able, given current restrictions. And this will serve to whet your appetite and reconnect with your personal passions and reclaim some of yourself from your organisation by sampling some of the life that you want to enjoy when you retire. This will also help you to increase your chances of a successful transition into retirement when your interest in work begins to fade. So we'd encourage you to start to put life now before work, get a taste of the things that you wish to do in retirement, and think of it of really giving your new lifestyle a test run and really making friends outside of work that will be, part of your tribe when you actually and eventually do retire. Thirdly, and there's a lot about this covered in the book, for which you will get an electronic copy of if you haven't got one already. And this is really important. And this is to create yourself what we call a transformational life plan. A transformational life plan considers how you've arrived at where you are today. So it looks back and then considers what do you wish to do tomorrow and beyond your working life, and really charting a course to get where you want to go and taking action. Note that I've deliberately removed the word retirement here because it's about reinventing yourself. It's a personal rebrand around who you are out of the suit and what you love to do, and really taking positive action. And we don't just call it a life plan, we call it a transformational life plan, because a life plan without action, which is the transformation, is just something that gathers dust and sits in your head or in the someday section. What makes a life plan transformational is action, taking some positive steps towards creating the life you want. It doesn't get given to you, so you really need to go onto a journey of self-discovery to open your mind to the possibilities of what you want to do. Creating an action plan for living. So it's thinking, planning and visualizing, helping you to bring clarity and forcing you to determine concise end goals. In his book, The Success Principles, which I'd recommend you read, by Jack Cranfield, writes, if you get clear on the what, the how will be taken care of. So in other words, knowing your end goal is of utmost importance of any endeavour, retirement planning included. How do you start this transformational life plan? Again, it's all in the book. We've given you some very, very definitive guides of how you kick off this process. You know, we'd be more than happy to talk that through with you. But you really need to think and visualize about what a great retirement looks like for you and what a great life looks like for you, and then start to take action. As you'd expect, being financial planners, being retirement ready also means having a financial plan. I'll cover this in a little bit more detail later, but very, very simply, a financial plan will calculate the cost of the life that you want, considering all of your personal financial resources, so pensions, property, income, etc. Consider all of that you have now and in the future, and then creating a future cash flow projections to determine if you've got enough money to live the lifestyle that you want. And it will culminate in financial strategies. If you haven't got enough, what do you need to do? What if you've got too much? Again, what do you need to do? So the financial planning side of things, whilst complex and you may need to involve some professional support, it's basically ensure that your money outlives you, but again, equally, you don't die with too much, because that would be a result of you under living. So all these things need to be brought together. The other things that I wanted to cover today was a look at multi-generational planning, which I'll come back to in a moment. But look, you'll all be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, and I like to link this in with retirement planning as well. Maslow's hierarchy basically said we all need to satisfy basic psychological needs such as food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep. The next level brings us into being healthy, having employment, property, family, social life, stability, love and belonging, very much having friendships, intimacy, a sense of connection in community, self-esteem, feeling good about ourselves, you know, ticking achievements off, having confidence, and then self-actualization, which is really the pinnacle of where we wish to be according to Maslow's law of hierarchy. If you link that in with retirement priorities, and again link it in with financial planning, really we want to make sure we've got enough money, and we call this financial security, this essential spends here, to satisfy having a roof over our head, food on our table, and clothes on our back. And that's the first thing we look to achieve when we're in retirement, and making sure we've got enough essential spends. We then hopefully have got some surplus money that allows us to do the things that we enjoy, and that could be spending money on hobbies or holidays and things like that, or supporting our family. This is really our discretionary spend. And then most of the retirees I see like to leave something for their children, either during their lifetime or on their passing. And this is this legacy here, where they're leaving monies to their families and other generations. So if we just explore that a little bit more, with our essential money and our essential spends, we don't want to be taking a risk with that. So this typically comes from guaranteed pension income or from state pensions. Something that's guaranteed, it's money we have in cash, for example, as well. So these are giving us guarantees, because we don't risk this. We don't risk the roof over our head. Our discretionary spend, again, can be covered by cash, but also hopefully we're going to be spending money in retirement for a good 10, 15, 20 years, maybe longer. So some of that money needs to be invested in a combination of bonds or equities. And again, equities will generally give a higher return over the longer term than bonds, and bonds will give a higher return than cash over the longer term. So having a good balance between these two is really important, particularly if we're going to beat the threat of inflation, which is a real negative for people in retirement, particularly if they have fixed incomes. And finally, you look at the legacy. Again, equities is typically the place to be, because this is possibly for 20, 30 years' time. And when this legacy is inherited, there's no reasons why the family would not continue with that equity strategy as well. So these are the frameworks of investments that we tend to look at and follow for many of our clients. So very much so, when we're looking at financial planning and multi-generational planning, there's certain things that we look at achieving with clients, and one of those, of course, is when we're investing clients' monies. Just a brief overview of how we feel you can win what we call the loser's game, and what we mean by that is not potentially losing money, but most people get average returns, and that would be losing the market game. And the way you can win this loser's game is by following 6 principles that we follow. Firstly, investing on purpose. Why are you investing money? Why are you saving money? And what return do you need from that? You really need to understand that, and that's really important to us. You know, putting money into investment stocks and shares without understanding the purpose of that money, for us, is a real kamikaze approach. So that's why it's really important to firstly understand the life that you want to live and the returns that you need from your investments, your resources to live that life. Because often people are either taking too much risk or not enough risk. So understand why you're investing is really important. Secondly, maximizing your returns by investing in equities. You know, it's a truism that if you look at historic returns, equities have outperformed cash or bonds over the longer term. Why? Because you're taking a higher risk, as we're experiencing at the moment, massive volatility, massive losses in the markets, and the FTSE's, you know, currently down by 18%. But in the longer term, equities will outperform cash. And it's really true to say that in the longer term, it's cash that's risky and equities that are low risk if you're taking a long-term approach. And you need to. The third point here is you have to invest long-term. Failing to invest long-term is speculation. You have to be a long-term investor. And how can you be a long-term investor is by retaining cash. Cash allows you to get through volatile periods as we're experiencing at the moment. It gives you comfort knowing you've got cash that you could draw down on if you don't want to be taking money from your investments at this moment in time. So having a healthy cash reserve is a really important, I suppose, link of having a successful investment strategy. And of course, you need to keep those emotions in check. There's often not many bad investments, but there's lots of bad investors. And what we try to do is educate our clients to become better investors. And they do that by not making rash decisions like selling today, for example, or selling in, even worse, at the beginning of March, the end of March. And not making crazy investment decisions and taking too much risks. So it really is about keeping those emotions in check. And the final point that we feel is important is we like to track indices rather than use active managers, because we really feel that this is an expensive game, that it's so difficult. It's like looking for that proverbial needle in the haystack, finding an active manager that's going to outperform benchmarks after charges. So we prefer to keep things simple and tracking markets, and also it's a lot cheaper as well, so it keeps more monies in your pocket from an investment perspective. So that's a brief overview of, again, winning this loser's game. And again, this is covered in my book. The final area I want to cover before perhaps taking on some questions, and by the way, if you do want to ask some questions, you can start filling that Q&A, because I'll come on to those in a moment, is multi-generational planning. It's an important area that needs to be considered, potentially. And most of the people that we work with and we look after, most of our clients are keen to help their families, either getting a start in life if they can afford to, or indeed leaving them a legacy. But again, there are certain people who feel that their children or others in their family should go out there and earn it themselves, and they won't be benefiting from my wealth, which I'm planning to spend. And that's all fair again. So again, not wishing to stereotype anything here, but vast majority of people we see do wish to support families where possible. But of course, how generous should you be is very much determined by affordability. Our first loyalty is to our clients and making sure they've got enough. So if you are planning to make gifts during your lifetime, or indeed during, on your passing, that leaving a legacy, we need to make sure that this is affordable for you to do that. And again, using cash flow software, you can analyze, well, how much could I afford to gift as a lump sum, or how much could I afford to gift as on a regular basis. So all these things need to be considered and looked at affordability. We also need to look at the impact of making gifts as well. A lot of people want their kids still to be hungry and for not make their lives too easy. So again, it's the impact of the gift that it has. And equally, we've certainly seen in the past that gifts haven't been well received by other family members, including children, who want their parents to spend money on themselves and want to be independent. So you really need to consider the impact of making such gifts. And finally, how do you gift? Do you use a trust, or do you gift outright? Often people will gift outright, and that can be, I don't know, simply a gift to pay off a debt, pay a deposit on a house, or it could be gifts into things like ISAs or junior ISAs or lifetime ISAs. So gifts into investments, or even pensions that you can gift. So it's, gifts into investment strategy for children is quite popular. Or of course you can gift into trust. And a lot of people gift into trust is because they're not quite ready for their children or other beneficiaries to benefit from these monies, or indeed they want to protect the assets. So again, what's becoming increasingly popular now is a gift into trust, and that trust then lending the deposit for a house maybe for children, because this provides a degree of protection just in case those children have marital problems or split from their partners if they're not married, or suffer some business problems, bankruptcy, etc. So trust can allow a certain degree of control on that gift as well. But certainly, multi-generational planning is very, very, very important part of retirement planning as we see it. Although we do tend to see that people tend to get in this a bit later in their retirement, probably in phase 2, once they've ensured they've had enough of their enjoyment during the early years of retirement, and a realization in their mid-70s, 80s, hey, we've got too much, we need to do something about it. Ideally, you would start that planning earlier, but again, you have to be comfortable that we can afford to do that. Okay, so we're coming on to the questions section now. So let me just bring myself back into this. There I am. Okay, so if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A section on here now. There has been a couple of questions that have been sent through to me, so I will deal with those first, and if none come through, then we'll close proceedings. But one of the questions I had was, Nick, if you could give me one tip for retirement planning, what would it be? I'd struggle with one tip, but I suppose the one tip I would give is to plan. Because planning is the best possible way that you can prepare for retirement. But, one tip is difficult for me. The other thing I would probably recommend that people do for retirement planning is what I call pre-tire. So this is where you sample a little bit of retirement, semi-retire, where you may work 2 or 3 days a week, and the other 2 or 3 days you're doing things for you. So it's giving you that time to sample life beyond the suit. So we would certainly recommend that people do give consideration to retirement if they're able to. Can they step away from their business? Can they job share with other employees? That's the sort of things that we would recommend people do. The second question I had is, should I be reducing the risk I take with my pension investments as I approach retirement? Really great question that is, and it's a difficult one for me to answer, because if the answer is yes or no, depending on the person's personal situations. Our experience with many of our clients as they get into retirement is we don't reduce the risk, because they've got cash that they can draw down on, or lower risk investments such as bonds that have gone up in the last two or 3 months despite this crisis. So often many of our clients do not reduce their risks because they're remaining investing into retirement as well. Provided they're not taking too much risk, of course, in the first instance. So a typical, and this has been very generic, a typical investment risk strategy would be probably about 60% in growth assets, so that's property or equities, and 40% in bonds is a typical kind of portfolio for someone in retirement. But again, we have seen people take more risk than that, and indeed less risk, of course. The final question I had in advance of the webinar is, what is the best age to retire? Well, what a question. Okay. And again, I can't give an age. Retirement is personal. Ideally, though, it's when you're young enough to enjoy a healthy lifestyle where you're fit and able, both physically and mentally, to enjoy doing the things that you want to do for hopefully a good 10 years, when you're fit and healthy. Because the longer you defer your retirement, the less time you will have during what I call phase one of retirement, where you're fit and healthy, and hopefully if you're able to enjoy your hobbies and take your holidays and do those kind of things. Saying that, we've got lots of clients who, some of them we call never retirees, and their retirement is doing things still with the business, still with their work, but also having more leisure time as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. They feel like they've got the best of both worlds. And it's particularly prevalent with business owners who are able to leave their business with trusted employees whilst they go out and enjoy themselves. So retirement is so personal. I can't emphasize that enough. We've got people who are in their late 40s and retired. We've got people in their 80s who are still working. It's personal, and it's determined by you. But again, one thing I have seen most recently is many studies have shown the earlier you retire, the longer your life expectancy, but that's very much determined by the job that you're actually in. And of course, this isn't always the case. Again, I'm sure we've all seen examples where people retire and sadly, a few months, years later, they sadly pass away. So, what age should you retire? It's personal, but you need to agree in your own mind an age that you want to retire. Right, okay, I can see there's no other questions that have come through. So what we'll do now is just bring this webinar to a close. There will be some resources that we will be sending through to you. They include an electronic copy of this book, and also a expenditure questionnaire where you can look at your numbers. I would encourage you to really give some consideration to some of the things that we've covered here today. And it is a very brief overview of what's included within the book as well. Hard copies of the books, of course, are available via Amazon, which you're able to source and find. But I'd like to thank you for joining me today on this session. You have all our contact details if you have any personal questions relevant to yourselves. But I'll say to you all today then, good evening, and thank you for joining me today.